Assalamu alaikum. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli waj'al li waziran min ahli Haruna akhi ushdud bihi azri washriku fi amri kay nusabbihaka kathira wa nazkuraka kathira innaka kunta bina basira. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Welcome, dear friends. Inshallah, we will continue with our discussion from the 24th word. We're trying to see how we can understand the hadiths. There are certain principles that we can also benefit, so how we can benefit from the hadith narrations and not interpret them literally, as there are many metaphors and allegories that are used, and there we went over certain important items actually, just to be aware of, that we have to carefully examine the hadith narrations, who it was mentioned, who was the person that the narration was being addressed to. So there are many different aspects that need to be looked into. So just to remind myself, the last time we discussed in the form of, we discussed a little bit about anarchy, and then how the Dajjal and the Gog and Magog, because they were discussing, the narrations were mentioning the end of times. And of course, all of them need to be interpreted accordingly to in our day and age, so that we can relate them to our living conditions as well. All right, so I will continue from here in this paragraph. Furthermore, the world has two faces. So this world that we live in, the universe, has two ways of looking at it, two faces, indeed three faces. One is the mirror to Almighty God's names, which I put in parentheses, qualities. So anything that we see in the universe, one side of it shows that all those different qualities. For example, if I'm eating a pomegranate, so the different quality, the sweetness, the color, the amazing packaging, the organization, the arrangement, all of those are nothing but qualities that I am seeing, which I called it a pomegranate. So one side of the way we need to look at the universe is to see what it points to as a messenger, as a missive, as something bringing news to me about whoever made it. So if I look at the tree or the clouds, I should see the attributes, the qualities of the one who is bringing that into existence. So that is one side of the one aspect of the within the two faces. And another looks to the hereafter. So another side of this universe, which I'm experiencing day by day, which is passing, and then continuous changes are happening in my life. So one side of that, those things that are happening, the acts that are happening, has the aspect of the hereafter as well. So I'm getting to experience the qualities which I would like to experience eternally, right? So they point to me, hey, don't you like this? In a way, waking me up. If I pay attention to the first phase, then the second phase kind of makes sense, that I would like to experience these qualities further and further. And they should take me to, yes, this death over here in this life is just nothing but a transition to the next world, where I get to experience the qualities in a much better way, right? And the third phase looks to transience and non-existence. So why is transience non-existence? So basically, I understood, okay, so the changes that are happening, nothing is static in this world, everything is in continuous motion and change. But anything that does disregards that, they are bringing news to me from their creator, so they kind of are existing by themselves, which is nothing but non-realistic, non-truth, non-existent kind of understanding. So just taking the world for granted and just living because we're just here by ourselves accidentally, maybe, or whatever the understanding is. So this is the world of the people of misguidance, which is not in accordance with the things that please God that we know. That is to say, it infers not that the vast world, so this third phase, this third aspect of transience and non-existence, it infers not that the vast world, the universe, which is the mirror to the most beautiful names, and consists of missives of the eternally besought one, the eternally besought one. This Qul huwallahu ahad Allahu samad, the one we are all looking to be attached to, that source, eternal source, and is the tillage of the hereafter. So this is world is like the tillage, means that we prepare ourselves, get ready, or we always use this example of like a school of the universe, get educated to experience everything in the hereafter. So the preparation ground for us, just like the farmers till the soil for the harvesting period, right? So they work on it for a certain period of time, and then at the end, the result is the beautiful harvest, the fruits and the vegetables that are being are there. But the world, but that the world, so in the third non-existent and transient, the view of this universe is the world of basically not seeing the missives of this eternally besought one and seeing it as the tillage of the hereafter, but that the world of those who worship the world. So they kind of get that view, transient and non-existence, keeps looking for the answers, the understanding from the world. So in a way, they worship not the creator of this universe, but the world itself, or nature, or accident, just all right. To worship the world which is opposed to the hereafter and is the source of all wrongs and spring of calamities. Is not worth, so this worship of the world and is not worth one everlasting particle, which will be given to the believers in the hereafter. So the belief in God, belief in the hereafter are very important concepts that we need to understand properly. Thus, how can the way it is understood by the unfair atheists be compared with this most true and serious truth? What has the meaning which those atheists suppose to be the most exaggerated and overstated to do with this? So I guess there are many hadiths that discuss about the hereafter, right? Giving us the purpose why we are living in this world, and many unfair, the ones who do not understand the reality, do not seek to understand, right? So they kind of say this is just exaggerated or overstated in the hadith narrations in a way. Right. So for example, the Quran gives many examples universe in terms of gardens and rivers, palaces. All right. Any thoughts so far on this paragraph? Any comments anyone would like to share? Pretty straightforward, I would think. Or anything that needs to be highlighted, you think? All right, so I will continue.
Can you
Yes, go ahead.
remind us the hadith that we are studying, literally what the hadith says, and we read the interpretation of it and see the difference between how the atheist understood from this word, this hadith narration by reading it literally, and how
Yeah, for example, the one we went over last time, right? If the world had as much value as a fly's wing for Almighty God, the unbelievers would not have had so much as a mouthful of water from it. This was one of the hadiths, right? That is discussing the eternal realm and the value of how much one should be looking forward to this eternal realm rather than getting stuck in the material world only. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Ali. Your voice is breaking up. I don't hear you. I don't know. Is it my network or somebody else? Is there anybody able to hear Brother Ali?
He's breaking up for me as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it might be his network then.
All right. Let's maybe if Brother Ali want to log in again and see if you can. Thank you, Beza, for the reminder. Yeah, in the meantime, anybody else has any other thoughts or because we hear a lot of different hadith narrations in our journey in this world. And many of them, just like the verses of the Quran, they need to be interpreted appropriately. Right. So even if I read this hadith narrations, I'm like, well, I don't know what to make out of these kind of phrases. So they need certain interpretations and we need to talk about those things. And also there was some other hadith narrations that we kind of went over last time, right? And then they were interpreted. So for example, the Dajjal hadith on the Dajjal was his first day is like a year, second day like a month, third day like a week, and his fourth day like other days. When he appears, the world will hear, he will travel the world in 40 days. So this is one sort of hadith narrations. And we saw how the author kind of broke it down in terms of during his time, how he saw based on the events that were happening historically, that how the different forces or the armies at that time kind of invaded and went over. And then we kind of also interpreted in our time also the internet and social media as well, how that is infiltrating basically the reality of the universe. Yeah, I think Brother Ali kind of logged off. Let's see if he joins back in. Hopefully he's probably rebooting his router, I would think. So any thoughts on worshiping the world? What do people think? I mean, nobody explicitly worships the world. Nobody would say that, yeah, I worship the world, but depends on what priorities we have in our lives, what we are doing. In a way, we kind of give more importance perhaps to the things that may not be really necessary in our for the hereafter for us to go through.
Yeah, I think to add on to what you said, to me, worship the world means living in a state of heedlessness where I'm just seeing one side of the same coin. Like you said, there's one side of anything that points to an absolute being, and at the same time, the other side points to an eternal life. So I think really living, oh yeah, there must be a God who gave me this and this and this, but that's maybe I wouldn't categorize it, but it's just keeps me here worshiping the world, if you will.
Yeah, thank you. Your comment made me realize about myself when I'm doing things. I don't really have that in my mind about the hereafter. Never may not occur at all. Basically, I may be busy with many things in this world, but then never realize, yes, all of them pertains to an aspect that deals with my hereafter. That this world is just the tillage place. Right. So it's just meaning everything is seen as a sign, a missive, a message bringing me news of my Lord, and then it's preparing me for the hereafter. So whatever I'm doing, I have to be keeping myself in check in a way that there is this aspect of hereafter in whatever I'm doing in my life. Right, Brother Ali is back. Alhamdulillah. I hope your mic is working now.
Inshallah.
Oh, okay, Alhamdulillah. So we kind of touched upon worshiping the world and how to keep the hereafter in with the things that we are doing in this world, not to get lost into the priorities of maybe just that don't have the reality of things, and just right. So you were making a point, brotherly, about the interpretations and not to read them literally, the hadith narrations.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned it, but I wanted to emphasize because of the importance of this point. Reading the hadith needs to be read, or every hadith narrations needs to be read by everyone, in fact, within the definition of the messengership, the mission of messengership. For example, you cannot read a medical book like a law book. In the same way, the prophetic narrations must be read and understood within the prophetic mission. The Quran verses must be read again within the purpose of the Quran itself. Unfortunately, although an extreme example is given here by an atheist, the atheist read. Do you still hear me? But there was a problem again.
Yes, now we hear you again. Yes.
Did you miss anything? Did you miss anything?
No, we did not. So you were saying
Okay.
the atheist is speaking, yes. An
Okay.
extreme example.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. But unfortunately, people are not everybody is atheist. They're very rare people are atheists, but this idea, reading the texts literally and not understanding the mission of the prophethood, not understand the purpose of the Quran, this idea of reading everything from not as an atheist, but worldly concerned perspectives. Even some Muslims are reading this this kind of hadith narrations, which the author has taken most problematic hadiths. Not every hadith is that problematic, even if you read it literally. But these are the most problematic and most questioned about the content, about the authenticity of the narrations. All these are specific cases, but still, these kind of hadiths of the Prophet are read, unfortunately, like atheist people read it. Although they are good people, they are believers, but still they read it from as the three perspectives of everything has three perspectives, but they read only from the perspective which looks to this world, transient world. And then I read and I heard many criticisms about this hadith. They say it can't be true. Okay. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ali. Yes, you're right. Most of the hadiths that we hear are like the common ones. For example, the 40 hadiths from Imam Nawawi, the collection. And we keep they keep repeating the same hadiths mostly. And these challenging ones, yes, we kind of maybe once in a while in some serious article or discussion, maybe it may come up. But they definitely need to be worked on. There's like the interpretation part, based on what the mission of the Prophet that you were mentioning earlier. Right, it cannot be read as a law book or as a biology book, but what the mission of the Prophet is in my life. Okay, so I will continue with the example. And for example, others, which the unfair atheist supposed to be exaggeration and even impossible overstatement, are narrations about the rewards for actions. So the rewards for actions, there are quite a few narrations on those at different stages. I mean, these are all quite popularly mentioned as well, that you read certain surahs and you get this reward. So for example, and merits of some of the Quran surahs. For example, there are narrations that the merit of Surah Al-Fatiha is equal to that of the Quran. Right? So a few verses could get the merit of the whole, how many verses of the Quran? And Surah Al-Ikhlas equals a third of the Quran. So these are like references from Bukhari, Tirmidhi. Surah Al-Zilzal, a quarter of the Quran. Surah Al-Kafirun, a quarter as well. And Surah Yasin is 10 times the merits of the whole Quran. So now unjust and unthinking people have said that these are impossible because Surah Yasin and the other meritorious surahs are found within the Quran, which makes it meaningless. So they are just comparing maybe the word count, letters counts, or something, making it an accounting practice, understanding. rather than what the meaning behind those sections are and what they're pointing to. What are they bringing in terms of the reality that I should be aware of? So I'm sure many of you have heard of this kind of hadiths, narrations where these are kind of mentioned. Any comments or thoughts? Okay, so I can move on to the next paragraph. All right. So the answer, now the author is based on the complaints by many of these unjust and unthinking people about the impossibility of whatever, how they are interpreting many of these narrations. So the author kind of shares his answer. So let's see what that is. The reality is this. For each of the all-wise Quran's letters is a merit. Each is a good deed. Out of divine grace, the merits of those letters sprout. So like a seed sprouts, so the merits of those letters, how meaningful they are, sprout and yield sometimes 10, sometimes 70, and sometimes 700 merits, like the letters of Ayatul Kursi. Sometimes they yield 1,500, like the letters of Surah Al-Ikhlas, and sometimes 10,000, like verses recited on Layl al-Barat, and those that coincide with other acceptable times. And sometimes they yield 30,000, like verses recited on the night of power, which are like poppy seed in their multiplicity. So a lot of barakah, blessings in terms of whenever you're feeling meaningless and less in life, in the darkness of the night, in your spiritual side, and you get the message and the powerful meaning behind your existence, and that just makes a person really happy in their life, in their existence. So the indication that night is the equivalent to 1,000 months makes it understood that on that night, one letter has 30,000 merits. For example, let us suppose there is a field planted with corn, 1,000 plants of it. If some seeds produce 7 shoots, and from each shoot 100 grains, then a single seed becomes the equivalent of 2/3 of the whole field. For example, if one seed produces 10 shoots and each yields 200 grains, then a single seed is the equivalent of twice the original field, and you can make further analogies in the same way. All right, so I see Brother Ali's hand up, so please go ahead, Brother Ali.
I think this matter has two aspects. For example, night of power is called as 1,000 months. It means equal to normal lifespan. That is we have to understand that power of night takes place towards the end of Ramadan, which is the month of the Quran. So when we are expected to get engaged with the Quran so heavily that we shouldn't have time for sparing extra time for extra food that our body needs. So we should be heavily engaged with the Quran. And of course, as a result of this engagement, what happens that the person starts realizing the message of the Quran and really assimilating it within his own spirit or feelings. So this realization is worth the whole life without this realization. One aspect of this in personal level. The other aspect is because of the emphasis made by the Quran, everybody, I noticed that power of night, Taraweeh prayer, for Taraweeh prayer, there was no place in the masjid. People were packed. All right. Following morning, only 5, 6 people in the same masjid. Taraweeh prayer is supposed to be somehow Hasan. It means somehow that you can argue about it, that the scholars say it's a good action. So the Prophet didn't establish Taraweeh prayer, that's why. But he heavily engaged himself with making ibadah in the masjid, in itikaf. That is a special case. But I mean, if someone doesn't pray Salat Taraweeh, is not responsible. That Allah will say, why didn't you pray Salat? But that is what happens because of the encouragement of the Quran and encouragement of the early believers and practitioners of Islam. So what happens when let me give you an example. Although the example is given, the example of seed, of a seed is given here is better. But if I write one petition to the mayor of the city, and if among the citizens of this city, if I get 1,000 signatures underneath it, what happens? One petition letter becomes 1,000 petition letter. That is why when the Imam recites Fatiha, how many people are there? Although one Fatiha is recited, 1,000 people, it becomes 1,000 Fatiha. Ameen at the end. It means I am putting my signature underneath it. I endorse it. If we look at this reality of life, we can understand what the Quran is telling. But especially, seed example is perfect because seed is created with the potential to grow into a tree, and the tree is created with tens of thousands of fruits and hundreds of thousands of seeds in it again. So this kind of surahs or chapters of the Quran, sections of the Quran, has this kind of potential information, essential teaching that the human beings must know. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, for example. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen covers everything. Ahad covers everything. What the Quran wants to, Quran is intended to teach the readers who the owner of this universe. That is the purpose of my existence, to know who the owner of my being. So that is why we have to understand these kind of narrations within the context of their purpose. Who's speaking? One, to whom he is speaking to, for what purpose he is speaking for, which kind of authority he is speaking. For example, let's say a president of a city, president of a country, speaking to his wife. He is the president, but authority is not the authority, but as an example, speaking to his wife doesn't have any effect more than one person. But as a president, 360 million people are concerned. So we have to pay attention to these four elements while we are reading the text, especially like the Quran and Hadith text, because they are universal messages. For example, I am an individual person who is speaking Ali, to whom he's speaking, to my friend, somebody. And for what purpose? I want, for example, to bring a cup of water for me. And which authority is a friend? Is different from the universal speech, universal mission is performed by the Quran and by the Prophet. So their words and messages must include the needs of these billions of people. So their value must be evaluated according to the content of their message and to whom they are speaking, etc. All these four elements must be always taken into account, and then question this kind of hadith narrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ali. Yes. Yeah, so the seed example is perfect actually for this kind of understanding in a way. Where like one seed produces many 10 shoots and then that multiplies. And so there are these kind of particular engagements that we do perform that hold very much a lot of merits in their way. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? All right. Now let us imagine the all-wise Quran to be a luminous, sacred, heavenly field. Each of its letters together with its original merit is like a seed. Their shoots will not be taken into consideration. They may be compared with the surahs and verses about which are narrations concerning their merits, like Yasin, Ikhlas, Fatiha, Kafirun, Zilzal. For example, the Quran has 300,620 letters, and Surah Al-Ikhlas together with Bismillah 69. 3 times 69 is 207 letters, so a little math here. Thus, if Surah Yasin's letters are reckoned and compared with all the letters of the all-wise Quran, and then multiplied 10 times, it produces the following result. Each letter of Surah Yasin has close to 500 merits. That is, that many good deeds may be reckoned. And so if you apply the others to this, you will understand what a subtle, fine truth and unexaggerated truth it is. So that was the 9th principle, but how does everybody understand this kind of hadith narrations about all the merits and the letters being significant? Because in the culture, it becomes like a mathematical activity. So let's hear from Pixel 7 Pro. Please, you can go ahead.
Hey, sorry, I can rename it later. I just have a question. I suppose, why does this multiplication or this multiplying effect matter? If every word or every surah is as meaningful or as important as the value that the rest of the text brings from the Quran, then where does the multiplication play a role? And what significance does that have?
All right, good question, Qasim, if I got you correctly. Thank you. Yeah, Brother Ali, please go ahead.
Rather than, of course, was it Qasim?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm pleased to see you here. So I didn't know the name before. Anyway, it's not important. Now, the letter, we have to understand multiplication of the letter in and of itself is not important, but letter used, for example, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Now, this letter in the word ahad, to my personal understanding, according to my limited capacity, for example, elif or ha or dal, when dal is employed in the word of ahad, if I understand, ahad means we always talk in this way in Hamim discussions that ahad means absoluteness of the creator. It means you cannot really count it, you cannot really put a limit, and you cannot really liken to anything. You know, it is something beyond the capacity of this universe. Who is the creator of the universe? So we call it only absolute being. We cannot define it, it means, within the conditions of this universe. So when I understand that my creator is absolute, is everything, it is worth my life. Why I am here? Just to know who my creator is, and absolute or ahad represents the purpose of my life. So where these letters are used takes their value according to the place they are really taking place. That's why these kind of sections of the Quran are specified in hadith narrations. And rather than, I personally understand that, rather than, when I read the section, for example, Ikhlas, I would be reading a third of the Quran. I wouldn't understand this at all this way. How I would understand these hadith narrations according to the, again, definition of the prophetic teaching. Prophet says, look, when you want to read a third of the Quran, how much you learn, how much benefit from it, example, how much time you spend on it. Now, this ikhlas needs that much time to reflect on it, that much really concentration needs on it. equal to. It means your understanding of ikhlas must be a third of the whole Quran valued, value-wise, if I could explain it. So be careful about reading Surah Ikhlas so carefully that it may take a third of the time that you will spend whole understanding of the Quran. I would definitely endorse it, confirm it. If I understand Ikhlas, that's it. I don't want almost anything else. This is the purpose of my life. Summarized there. And it is not mentioned here that Ayatul Kursi. If someone understands Ayatul Kursi and applies it and feels it consciously in his life, that's it. He fulfills his mission of existence in this world. So powerful. Rather than giving a numerical value, we have to understand the value of its content, and we have to regard every single letter employed in these chapters, sections of the Quran, and be careful while you are reading it. For example, when I read a verse concerning inheritance law, of course, those fiqh scholars have to concentrate each letter because of their speciality. But I would rather be specialized in Imam perspective of the Quran, and every single letter, whether it is, for example, al-ahad or ahadun. But Qul huwallahu ahadun. But Allahu as-samad. There is L there. L Samad is read as Samad. Why not El Ahad and as Samad? It is worth spending time as if you are going to spend time in general for the reading of a third of the Quran. It is worth that much. That is, this kind of comparisons must be understood, not numerical values, my friend Qasim, in and of themselves, these values. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. That was wonderful, actually. Keep coming, Qasim, to ask these questions. All right. Any other thoughts by anyone or any other comments? All right, so we'll continue with the 10th principle. So we're reading basically how the principles of reading the hadith narrations, and we cannot read them literally, but they need to be interpreted. And of course, this is one example where the merits of many verses are kind of mentioned in the narrations, right? And how, as Brother Ali just beautifully shared, how we need to understand them, that it's not really the numerical value, but how much of the meaning behind those particular letters and phrases and words, and how much worth they are in terms of the whole all the sections of the Quran. So we need to really seriously study them in that sense.
For example, in classical tafsir, you see that the scholars are really arguing about one letter, not letter, haraka. How was the word for it? Once Suhail reminded me this was not transliteration.
Diacritical or something?
Diacritical. Not only there are some words so interesting, beautiful. You can read it, for example, as un or in. Grammatically, both are possible. Argument, argument, argument. If you read it it would mean this, it would read it in the same letter. Just the diacritical side is different because grammatically possible to read. The Quran was, I am sure you all know that Quran's written, original Mus'haf, it was written with no dots, no diacritical indications or signs, just lines. You can read, maybe some of them is possible to be read 20 different ways. And scholars really spent their time, or whole life, just to understand, to make sure what they really mean. So that the sentence, the verse will make sense within the context of the Quran, according to its purpose, of course. Yeah, diacritical mark. Thank you, Suhey.
Good point. Thank you for sharing that. Right. So the 10th principle. Like with most of the other sorts of creatures among mankind are certain individuals who are extraordinary by virtue of their acts and deeds. If those individuals have advanced in good deeds, they have been the cause of pride in mankind. Otherwise, they have been the cause of their shame. Also, they are hidden. It is as though each becomes a collective identity, an imaginary goal. Other individuals try to emulate them, and it is possible. That means being absolute and indefinite. It is possible for such a perfect, extraordinary person to be present everywhere. Other individuals try to emulate. It is possible. That means being absolute and indefinite. It is possible for such a perfect, extraordinary person to be present everywhere. In regard to this indefiniteness, according to logic, his universality may be posited in the form of possible proposition. That is, it is possible for all acts to produce the following result. For example, whoever performs 2 rakats of prayers at such and such a time has performed the equivalent of the Hajj. So this is also a hadith narration. So 2 rakats of prayer at a particular time is equivalent to that of a Hajj. So what's the meaning behind the Hajj? One has to understand that as well to make sense of this particular hadith narration. It is thus the truth that at certain times 2 rakah of prayers may be the equivalent of a Hajj. Due to its universality, so there's this universality aspect, this meaning may apply to all prayers of 2 rakats. Every 2 rakah prayers can be the equivalent of a Hajj. That means what narrations of this sort refer to is not in fact continuous and universal, because since there are conditions of acceptance, it disallows it being continuous and universal. So I didn't really understand this, but we will go over this. So So narrations of this sort referred to as not something continuous and universal because there are conditions of acceptance. Okay, so there are conditions of acceptance. It disallows it being continuous and universal. It is either in fact temporary and absolute or possible and universal. That is to say, the universality in this sort of hadith is in regard to possibility. Universality in this sort of hadith is in regard to its possibility that it may be accepted. So it's not definite in a way. For example, backbiting is like murder, is another hadith narration. This means someone who indulges in backbiting is more harmful than deadly poison, like a killer. And for example, a good word is a deed so good it is like freeing a slave. So all these different hadith narrations that we need to kind of understand and interpret cannot be understood literally. So in this 10th principle, I take it as there are certain hadiths that kind of mention about the possibility of them being accepted, right? They're possible, but they're not universally, like if it was universal, then everybody would just be getting them, but depends on the state of the individual, what condition they are in, and what the timing and what their spiritual state is. So there's a possible proposition, as he says, the form of a, so it enters into. So in the examples of the hadith narrations of 2 rakats equivalent to a hajj. So they're not universal because there are conditions of acceptance for those 2 rakats for it to be equivalent of a hajj. Certain times. All right. Brother Ali, please go ahead.
I'm asking our friends here, how do you think backbiting is equal to killing? How come? I think anyone would like to share his thoughts about it?
Go ahead, Sim.
So I'm going to think out loud here a little bit. I may need some extra time to formulate a full opinion, but the only thing that comes to my mind is you're kind of violating almost not a human right, but you're violating or breaking the law of what's right. And so what I mean by that is, for example, taking someone's life or killing someone is not my right. I don't have the right to choose, or I don't have the right to determine who gets to live and who does not get to live. So similarly, the only thing I can think of is when you're backbiting, you're going against the nature of how things are meant to be. And in doing so, you can say the crime of backbiting is no different than the crime of taking one's life.
It's a pretty serious act then, backbiting. Yeah. Brother Ali, go ahead.
Can you pay attention to this? His universality may be posited in the form of a possible proposition And that is, it is possible for all acts and to produce the following result. So what I understood as I thank Qasim for sharing his idea as an extension to his idea, his reflections, his thought. For example, backbiting is the easiest way of doing it, and it is very sweet. My ego, my how they say self-centered concerns, I love it, but it is so easily be used by everyone. So it is, if it is not controlled, the backbiting causes many what is the word? Dissension in the society. So it may be worse than killing a person if it is not prevented. For example, a good word can save one's life. That is why how it said a good word is a deed so good it is like freeing a slave. Yes, but as an extension to what Qasim said, freeing a slave. Why? For example, a person is a slave, but he's get his freedom. So maybe we can liken it, this person has gained his individual freedom, so he became a human being now, not like an animal, because slave means equal to the horse under the ownership of the person, master. So he became a human being now by, for example, saying a good word may save a person's hundreds of persons' life. For example, there is a war, and somebody is insisting. Instead of insisting in fighting, if someone speaks in a nice way, and the enemy or the conflict becomes softened, and how many people's life left is saved? Because war may end up, because of this speech, may end up in peace. Hundreds of lives are saved. So this kind of encouragements, we should take it not literally again. These, for example, saying a good word or not doing backbiting, these kind of actions at a universal level, it means, let's say nationwide, result is really unimaginable. Can we imagine if we don't do backbiting, and if we don't always address to people with good words, society's color, the main appearance will change. So important. That is why through this, when it is read literally, the meaning becomes unbalanced. Extreme way of presenting a simple matter to a very severe subject, killing, murdering. But because of the possibility of backbiting, if it is not prohibited, can you imagine? We keep wasting our time and causing dissension in the society. We can think about the importance of it and understand that. I mean, if I read a hadith saying that biting is more than worse than murder, I would say, thinking that, yeah, if it wasn't prohibited, how universe-wide it will be, universal level, it will be by all people, comfortably used. And can you imagine this society? Millions of people lose their value in their life, human life, waste their time, worse than murder. If you really think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ali. So what were you saying about the universality part? So, because he says, in fact, either in fact temporary and absolute or possible and universal. What is, I didn't quite grasp what the author is kind of mentioning in terms of this, or anybody else, maybe.
How hard you find to kill a person?
Very
As-
hard. Yeah,
yeah.
impossible. Yeah.
Can you do that?
No, it doesn't sit well.
So, for example, there is, as far as I understand, there is one verse in the Quran prohibiting killing. And if someone kills by mistake or plant, there is a word for it, I don't remember, plant murder. What was the word? Comes and goes. Deliberate murder. So I am trying to remember this word, technical word. Doesn't matter. Deliberate plant murder, plant, not accidental. Maybe two, one, two, because God created us with the sense that we hate killing. It's not easy to fall into it. But how much possible, I would ask our moderator Asim, how much possible to gossip in our lives?
A lot, many times.
Yeah. So, and it is harmful, but very harmful. The end of gossip may cause many deaths. So we need to be warned about the severity of the danger of gossiping. Backbiting. That is what I understand from the nature of this backbiting is universal. Easily, everybody can practice it. That is why it needs to be continuously reminded and repeated, and also give an example like this one. Backbiting is like murder. So be careful, watch out about it. It needs warning, serious warning. That's what I understood. Possibility of practice. That's how I understood it.
I see. Thank you. All right. So I think we can stop here for today. We're a little over time. So inshallah, we'll continue with this subject next time, inshallah, from the paragraph here in order to encourage basically why these hadith narrations are there, why, and of course, as Brother Lee mentioned, they can be widely practiced. So we need the warnings and these kind of reminders in our lives here. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma alamtana innaka anta al-alimul hakim. وآخر دعوانا على الحمد لله رب العالمين بحرمة سورة الفاتحة.
Before you close the recording, that's why people say, I don't need to be reminded not to kill people. I already know it. Yeah, that's why Quran mentions only once, maybe twice. But you need to be reminded what if you miss tawheed, if you really backbite, then you will be doing so grave sins, mistakes, making mistakes, grave mistakes. That's why the balance in the teachings of the Quran is so perfectly adjusted if we pay attention from this perspective.
Inshallah. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Any other comments final before we close? Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.